Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Garnvine. Today on Gracefully Graying, I am pleased to welcome as my guest Dr. Justin Rezze, the Director of Theoria Medical and FiveStar Telemed. Dr. Rezze, welcome to Gracefully Graying.
Good morning, Henry. Thank you for having me. I hope all is well with you and the Gracefully Graying team.
We're staying safe. As you can see, I'm shooting from my house and you look like you're in your house. So.
I am as well, yes, for now at least.
Okay, I'm going to call you Justin because this is a very informal show, and just call me Henry. First of all, tell us about your background.
So, Henry, I started in internal medicine. I went to Wayne State University for medical school. Native of Detroit, born and raised in Detroit, trained in Detroit. So after Wayne State University, I attended St. John, Ascension St. John, which is in the Detroit Grosse Pointe border for residency. Specialized in internal medicine with the goal to become an hospitalist. Once I finished residency, I went into hospitalist medicine, trained or was a hospitalist for about two and a half years, became chief hospitalist at Ascension Genesis. While I was a hospitalist there, I saw a great need in post-acute care. The main reason being that I was seeing a lot of patients that we were sending out of the hospital to post-acute care facilities with the notion that they would receive immediate care, 24-hour care, and that the patients would have a less likelihood of coming back to the hospital for the acute problem that they were admitted for originally. Much to my surprise, when we would send them to the post-acute care facilities, a lot of times these patients would come back for the same acute issue that we had sent them out for originally. So as a hospitalist and as a hospitalist group that was focused on not only patient-centered care, but also metrics for the hospital, there was great concern for why these patients were returning back to the hospital. So when the opportunity arose for me to move to post-acute care and have a place that I was medical director at where I could safely discharge our patients and ensure that the highest quality of care was delivered at that facility, I took that opportunity immediately.
And now you are one of the heads of PRI Medical and FiveStar Telemed. So why don't you tell us about either one or both of these entities? And I don't know if they blend together.
So the companies blend very closely together. The Theoria Medical portion of our business is our medical management, physical medical management portion of our business, meaning that in the post-acute care facilities, we deliver physical rounders, which is in the model of both a mid-level and a physician on site at the post-acute care facilities. The model differs from a lot of typical models within post-acute care with our presence in the actual facility. So our mid-level is in the facility anywhere from 5 to 7 days a week, and our physician is in the building anywhere from 4 to 5 days a week at least. The Theoria Medical model goes way beyond just the medical management, but it goes really into the kind of sense that you see within our group. And within our group, I mean, we're more like a family than we are a medical group. There's a lot of accountability, which is important in medicine because with accountability comes high quality delivered medicine. But also the providers that are there, we really are specific about the type of provider that we look for. So with the providers that are within our group, they are providers who care greatly about the senior population. They are providers who practice evidence-based medicine. They are providers who want to see their patients do well and are committed to their patients' outcomes. So the Theoria Medical portion of our business is an evolved portion of our business that really takes the physicians and mid-levels involvement and commitment to the patient population. Nursing home business is relatively a difficult business because of and difficult portion of medicine because of the types of patients that you're taking care of. I mean, these are very chronically ill patients, and you have to act both as their PCP and also you have to address acute issues. So it's not a well addressed portion of medicine. And so our providers that are committed to this portion of medicine really take pride in their work because they're delivering care to a portion of medicine that would typically not get the standard of care that they are getting now. With FiveStar Telemed, the reason that was developed was because as a hospitalist, we have 24/7 care in the hospital. So the hospitalist method of delivering medicine involves a physician on call or rounding during the day, and then a physician presence overnight that is on call for messages and for taking care of patient issues. With the presence that we have in the buildings or the facilities during the day, even with the extreme coverage that we have during the day, I still saw a gap in care overnight and on off hours during the weekend. So what we did is we developed telemedicine in order to deliver that care overnight and to continue care throughout the weekend, because we saw that during the second shifts and third shifts of nursing, the nursing shift or the staffing of the nursings, those were the times in which the patients were the higher risk or the highest risk to return back to the hospital. So by implementing telemedicine, that allows a physician presence, a mid-level presence, to ensure that those patients are taken care of, their issues are being addressed, and we're further reducing the risk of them returning back to the hospital or having a negative outcome.
To explain, when I'm thinking, you and I are doing a virtual telecast, and I'm thinking, is telemedicine similar where, everything's done electronically or virtually?
So telemedicine is a very generic term, and this is what when we are talking to potential clients, I always make them aware that telemedicine is a very generic term. So telemedicine would be very synonymous with me saying that I practice medicine. So you look at me and you say, well, Justin, what type of medicine do you practice? I say, well, I practice medicine. You say, well, are you a surgeon? Are you an internal medicine doctor? Are you a family medicine doctor? Are you an OBGYN? There's variations of medicine, just as there are variations of telemedicine. So there is the typical model of telemedicine that is just a face-to-face interaction. So for example, you have a cough. I'm your primary care physician. I'm like, you know what, Henry, I need to see you. I need to take a look at you. Let me see how you look virtually, clinically. So you and I start a face-to-face interaction, very similar to as we are right now. I take a look at you and I'm like, Henry, you look really bad. You don't look good. I think you need to go to the hospital. So that's one variation of telemedicine. Or that fork could also go to where I say, Henry, I'm going to give you some antibiotics. I want you to stay home and take care of yourself, and I'll check on you tomorrow. That is one variation of telemedicine. Our telemedicine model is significantly different from what mainstream considers telemedicine. So our physicians have the ability to literally virtually physically assess these patients, meaning that they are virtually present. The nurses or CNAs are engaging with the patient physically, but we are doing everything from auscultation with a stethoscope. We are doing EKGs. We are doing full skin assessments and wound assessments with a 1080p hand cam. We are doing lung capacity assessments and expiratory volumes using devices that are Bluetooth connected to the device. And we've also gone as far as we've partnered with companies like Abbott and Philips, where we have ultrasounds and iStat devices that are on the device. So what an iStat is it allows the opportunity for us to obtain immediate labs at the bedside for the patient so that we don't have to call phlebotomists for them to come and pull blood. So our model of telemedicine is significantly different. Our group, from the telemedicine perspective, prides itself on nursing education. So the difference between post-acute and acute is that in the hospital, a physician sees the patient every single day. So irregardless of what's going on with the patient, that patient is being seen every day until they discharge. In post-acute, it's a very subjective environment, meaning that the physician does not see that patient every day. So that patient is seen on an as-needed basis. So typically what the model is that the patient is seen per regulation within 48 hours during the week or 72 hours over a weekend. Our group standard is within 24 hours, but the Michigan regulations or federal regulations are within 48 hours or 72 hours over a weekend, that patient must be seen for their initial visit. Beyond that, there's nothing further in terms of regulation aside from a 30-day and a 60-day visit that follows that. So that patient could potentially decompensate over the course of several days if a physician is not aware of what's going on. So we rely heavily on what nursing is telling us and conveying to us regarding information from the day-to-day and changes in the patient. So what the FiveStar Telemed model really puts a lot of reliance on and stresses is education of the nursing staff, because our theory is, and proven theory is that if the nursing staff is well educated and has the support of our physicians and our mid-levels, then the nursing staff is equipped to make better clinical decisions regarding when a patient is decompensating. So that's why the facilities really put a lot of reliance on us and love our services because we make their staff better. We are there to support them. And I think that within post-acute care, that is a major component. I think that the reason that post-acute care lags behind acute care is because of the lack of involvement by physicians. So that's what our group does. We really step up and we're there to provide physician involvement, mid-level involvement, and really work together in collaboration to make sure that these patients are taken care of and that they have the best environment to reach their best possible outcome.
Justin, let me jump in because I'm trying to clarify it for our lay audience. So what it seems is, first of all, you're available at certain off hours while a patient is in hospital. And second of all, you're available so that your nurses are trained to really see signs of distress or the fact that someone may not be healing properly or maybe going into some type of relapse. And this is where your telemedicine steps in, where the nurses will say, we need you to step in. Please supervise or do this. You run these tests. You're there on the spot with one of your doctors, telephonically or visually, and coordinating things almost like a triage with the nursing staff or whoever's there, whether it's at a nursing home or a hospital, and one of the doctors is overseeing. Is that kind of a simplification of how it works?
Yeah, pretty simple. So I'll give you a prime example of a scenario. So let's say Mr. Smith is in a facility and he's feeling short of breath. He tells the nurse, he's like, you know what, I just feel kind of short of breath. I'm not doing terribly. I feel a little thing in my chest. I'm just feeling a little bit short of breath. Without the ability to contact a physician right then and there, the nurse may say, okay, Mr. Smith, well, the doctor will see you tomorrow. You look okay. Your vitals are all stable. The nurse doesn't notice any distress, and Mr. Smith looks okay. And maybe he complained of shortness of breath 2 days before, and so it's not really a huge red flag for the nurse. So the next day comes by, the physician sees Mr. Smith, and now he's more short of breath. So we get an X-ray, and he has full-blown pneumonia, right? So maybe that 12-hour period made a difference, or maybe that day period made a difference. With our model, that nurse is trained and knows that they have full support without the fear of a physician getting upset about calling them in the middle of the night, about contacting them for something that they don't think is a big deal. They have that ability to contact us and say, hey, you know what? Mr. Smith is here. He's short of breath. And then Dr. Rezze comes in and says, well, you know what, Nurse Nancy, go ahead and get a chest X-ray on Mr. Smith. I'm concerned he may have pneumonia. He was in the hospital for pneumonia just now. We're looking at the charts. We're live with the patient. We're doing a full assessment. And we immediately intervene rather than that festering for 12 hours or 24 hours or 36 hours. So that's how we really deliver patient-centered care and care that is beyond the standard of medicine. And so we ensure the best possible outcome by essentially providing the Amazon type mentality with medicine. So everyone knows that with the Amazon mentality, people expect customer service right now, right this second. I want it today. So why should healthcare be any different? And that's our model, is that we want healthcare to be delivered to all of our patients immediately, instantaneously, so that they ensure that they can return home, or if they're a long-term care patient, that they ensure the best possible outcome.
Justin, it sounds like you're on the cutting edge of technology. And when I was reviewing your website, certain things stuck out at me. And first of all, what is wireless spirometry?
Sure. So we've put together many protocols, and the place where this came into a role is we have many COPD protocols that are in place, because one of the diagnoses that has a highest risk for return to hospitalization is a person who is suffering from COPD or emphysema. So we've teamed with some of the best pulmonologists in Michigan, and part of our workflow was that these patients, we get their expiratory volumes, which means that a patient, you're basically measuring the amount of capacity that their lungs have and the amount of air that they can force out of their lungs. So what the spirometer allows us to do is to get a baseline of what that patient is. And then a lot of times, or many times, we'll get contacted for a patient that's quote unquote short of breath. And we can actually determine whether or not that patient is in a COPD exacerbation. Is it really something related to their lung? Is it just anxiety? So that allows us to differentiate between what's actually going on with the patient. And then also allows us to optimize their medications while they're within the facility. So everything that we do is very strategic. It's not just there because we want to have all the bells and whistles with our telemedicine devices. Everything that we have with our telemedicine devices were placed there because the top hospitalists or pulmonologists or cardiologists in the industry thought that there was a need, or it's been proven that there's a need to have that device within our telemedicine unit. And yes, absolutely, I would consider us on the cutting edge. I don't know of a medical group in the country that's like ours, and so I refer to us internally as the Silicon Valley Medical Group. And the reason being is because our development team and our tech team is just as large as our medical management group. So we have a full on-staff tech development, full stack developers, coders, programmers, whatever you want to refer to them as, on our team that do everything in-house. So our design and our program for our telemedicine devices, and also all of our proprietary software, you won't find anywhere else. Our software was built from scratch. Our servers were built from scratch. Everything was built in-house. And I don't mean that we sourced it. I literally mean these people are in-house as part of our team 24/7. And actually, our most recent launch within the next few weeks here, we'll be releasing our own EHR. So we'll be on our own electronic health record system for all of our providers to utilize and make them the most efficient so that they can spend more time at the bedside taking care of patients.
Justin, tell us about remote resuscitation.
Remote auscultation?
Yes.
Yeah, so remote auscultation, what we've done is we have a Littman stethoscope. It's a 3200 device that's incorporated within the unit. So what the Littman stethoscope allows the nurse to do, and also the physician that's part of the call to do, is to fully assess lung sounds, heart sounds, whatever the doctor or mid-level wants to auscultate, and it is essentially like they are there. So how it works is the nurse has an actual stethoscope. They put the earpieces into their ears. They go to assess the patient, and they're actually listening with the physician. So this relates back to where I was saying that our team prides itself on education. I can't tell you, Henry, the amount of nurses that we educate overnight, new nurses who maybe aren't sure what a certain lung sound sounds like, or aren't sure if it's I'm going to use some medical terms, so either a wheeze or a crackle, or they're really not sure what those sound like. So our physicians and mid-levels are allowed to, or able to, provide positive reinforcement and say, hey, you know what, that's not this, it's not a wheeze. I actually hear a rail, or I hear a crackle, or I hear whatever. And so the nurses are further educated because they're actually listening with the physician, and the physician is providing education literally in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., when normally those nurses, the third shift nurses, would be on their own.
Justin, we're now talking, especially in the state of Michigan, we are under stay-at-home orders for at least another 2.5, 3 weeks.
Sure.
How has this impacted, if anything, your medical team is more equipped to deal with this than traditional medicine, it seems?
Correct. So as the largest post-acute care group in Michigan, we have been able to really get ahead of the spread of COVID. So we started a COVID unit within the city of Detroit, where in order to limit the exposure of our providers, but also the main concern being the spreading, or the silent spreading of COVID from our providers to other patients who are not infected with COVID, we use telemedicine in order to remotely assess those patients. And so telemedicine doesn't necessarily have to be done like from the home to the facility. In this particular facility, our physicians and mid-levels were on site. They're just at times were not going into the COVID unit in order to limit the amount of times that they were going in and out, so to protect the rest of the building. So telemedicine was utilized in order to assess these patients, provide them beyond the standard of care of medicine, and really put them in an environment, again, to get them to the best possible outcome, while not exposing other patients to the potential of being transmitted with COVID. So I think that even with the non-COVID designated facilities, again, we've been able to treat acutely ill patients, patients with multiple chronic comorbidities that are maybe or may not be contracted with COVID, but we've been able to ensure, again, that they are delivered acute care within the facilities and keep them out of the hospital when the hospitals are overburdened with the current COVID population.
What are the demographics of your patient? Are most of them like 50 or 60 and over, or patient population?
So I always break each facility into two populations. So within the skilled nursing facilities that we deliver care to, there's the skilled population or the acute population, and then there's the long-term care population. So the long-term care population are patients that actually live in the facility. That is their home. The skilled or acute population are the patients who are coming over from the hospital that maybe they had a knee done and they need rehab, or they had cardiac surgery and they need rehab. Or maybe they had a long period of time where they were in the hospital for weeks and they need further physical therapy. Within the long-term care population, our average age ranges anywhere from 70 up to 95. We actually have a couple centurions who are 105, 106. Our average age of the population that we take care of currently resides right around 78, and that varies slightly. With the skilled population, it's fairly the same population, a little younger. Our average population is around 74 to 75. So we are starting to see a slow trend up of the age population that we are taking care of, which is great because that's an indication that modern medicine is working. People are living longer. They're able to live longer with multiple comorbidities, and they're able to really live a quality life because of the ability to have physical therapy, get them back or near their baseline, and get them back home.
Justin, you also have FiveStar Labs. Tell us about that.
Sure. So FiveStar Labs is a division of our FiveStar Telemedicine, our Telemed program. FiveStar Labs refers back to what I was talking about with the Abbott iStat. So the Abbott iStat was a device that we decided to incorporate into our units for the reason being that oftentimes our providers will get contacted overnight and there may be something that's clinically going on and we need baseline labs to know what the patient is, what's actually going on with the patient. So does the patient have a low hemoglobin or low blood count? Are they in kidney failure? What do their electrolytes look like? So the FiveStar Labs portion of our Telemed program allows the provider to get instantaneous labs at the bedside rather than there being an unknown and further potential risk for the patient being sent out to the hospital, and also to deliver the highest quality of care in terms of mediating and really directing the nurse to deliver high quality care to the patient. So for example, within our patient population, we deal with a great amount of congestive heart failure patients. So patients who were just recently in the hospital for having a significant amount of fluid on them, they were short of breath, they may have had a 5 to 7 day stay at the hospital, and now they're being transferred over to the skilled nursing facility for rehab because of their prolonged stay at the hospital. So when they come over to us, their medications have recently been adjusted. They've been seen by their cardiologist. Maybe their water pill was adjusted. And so there are times that these patients start to return back to the previous state that they were in when they returned to the hospital. So it's a great necessity overnight to know a patient's kidney function before addressing or changing fluid pills because of the reason that they were just recently changed. So this really gives us a great baseline to assess kidney function and know if the patient has too much fluid or not enough fluid on them. And then in addition, for patients who, for example, were just recently in the hospital for a blood transfusion, and let's say now they're having symptoms of low blood count, we can rule that out overnight because we're able to obtain those labs instantaneously. So again, it goes back to providing a hospital-like type of care in a post-acute care facility. And that's really our whole goal in these facilities.
You're on the cutting edge of technology. Do you see any changes as a result of the coronavirus going forward?
Sure. So I think that with the huge reliance on telemedicine, I mean, as we both know, and the news has reported, and I mean, you talk to any primary care physician, primary care physicians are struggling right now because the routine visits that typically come into their facilities are not coming in, and they're being essentially forced to use telemedicine. So CMS and a lot of the commercial payers have loosened the restrictions on telemedicine because of the unique need that we have during COVID-19. So I think that it's going to be very hard to reel back the allowance that has already been given to telemedicine and the based on the extenuating circumstances, but also I think it's going to be difficult to change physicians' ways that they've already been adapted to over the past several months. So within a primary care practice, for example, if I need to see my patient, I'm going to rely on telemedicine because it's unlikely that that patient A is going to want to come to my office because they don't want to be exposed to COVID, or B, maybe they're not well enough to come to my office. So there is that reliance on telemedicine. I think that us as humans, we're creatures of habit. And so with the adaptation of telemedicine during this pandemic, it's going to be very, very difficult to get back to the normal routine or the normal old sense of medicine. I think that telemedicine is here to stay, and I think it's stronger than ever.
So if anything, it's like we're in the middle of a disaster, but I use the old analogy, you've learned how to turn lemons into lemonade, and it seems like your group is doing it quite well. What are some other things that you see going on for the future with regard to Telemed or FiveStar Lab or anything you're involved in?
Sure. So we are a lot of our physicians are hospitalist trained. So we are starting to move back into the acute setting. So one of the things that we're looking at now is how can we apply our telemedicine services to more centered on hospital care, because there are a lot of hospitals that either A, don't have the ability to have a physician there overnight, or maybe B, it doesn't financially make sense to have a physician in the hospital overnight, or C, you see a lot of rural hospitals or critical access hospitals that aren't able to get the resources to have a physician there overnight. So we're looking at that model because, again, we are all hospitalist trained, so we are used to taking care of sick patients. So we're really trying to push the envelope in terms of the patient population that we're able to treat and address with telemedicine. And another portion of our program that we just recently developed with the entire COVID pandemic that transpired or went through Michigan very quickly is that we developed a program that is accessible by primary care physicians to directly access their patients. So very similar to the video call that you and I are on currently, but HIPAA compliant and able for the physician to actually document within the application so that they know which patient they saw and what was going on with that patient, and to have little footnotes after they complete the visit. So again, I think that the world of telemedicine will continue to evolve. I do think that there will be more of an emphasis on physical assessment. I think that, again, although there are variations of telemedicine, I do think that physical exam and the ability to actually auscultate and do a physical assessment of the patient shouldn't be minimized during a telemedicine call. And so I think that will continue to be of more importance as telemedicine continues to evolve over the future months or years.
Justin, Dr. Justin Rezze, we are out of time. I really want to thank you for being my guest on Gracefully Graying, and I think this has been fascinating, and it really shows how cutting-edge technology in medicine can really help patients, and especially now when there's so much urgency involved, you're right on the cutting edge. So I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying, and I want to thank our viewers for watching Gracefully Graying. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, Henry. Have a good day. Thank you.
You too.